Hi everyone, I want to introduce a project I've been working on called Auto Data Analyst. It's a free open source data analyst system that helps you analyze any data. Um, First things first, this does have a public GitHub repository. I'll link it in the description, but please use it, tweak it, fork it, do whatever you want. But let's get started and show you how it works. So first thing first, let's get some data. I'm just going to use some data I found on the internet. So the first data set is going to be an HR data set. It's not real HR data, but we'll go ahead and download that. And then the second one, which shows the versatility of the system, is a completely different data set. It is an NFL offensive stats data set. It's a pretty large data set. So go ahead and download that as well. And now we are ready to load data. So let's go ahead and move those downloads over to our project folder. Get them in our data loader. Okay, cool. And now we can go ahead and run the first part of the system. So the first part is the database creation and maintenance component. So we'll go ahead and run our main program, which does three things, right? It allows you to load data, so it handles new loads as well as refreshes. It allows you to edit the data dictionary, which will be created automatically when you load data. And then it allows you to delete tables and dictionary entries. So the first thing we'll do is we'll load data to get those two tables in. It's going to ask me if I want to confirm. Yes, I do. And bam, it's loaded data. So you'll see there's now a SQLite database, which has those two tables, as well as the data dictionary, which is really important for the second part of the system. But essentially, this is just going to automatically produce information about the tables and the columns within the tables for anything that we load. So you can see here's like our fields, and it's going to have some stuff that which is calculated programmatically in Python. So things like pick list values or the data type or if there's unique values. But then there's also this really important definition field, which loads blank when we first load data. And so the next thing we're going to do is to sort of work on populating that. And we're going to do that with the second menu option, which is edit the data dictionary. And we'll go ahead and select our HR table first. And we have two options here. So the first one is we can auto-generate definitions using OpenAI's API and GPT-4o model. And this will essentially allow you to send either the field headers only or the field headers plus some sample data over to OpenAI. And it will then create definitions for each field in your data set. If you have more sensitive data and you don't want to send either rows or just the field headers, but you want to send nothing to OpenAI, you can individually edit the field definitions yourself, which is just going field by field and typing them in. But since quick demo, we'll go ahead and auto-generate, and we'll send 5 rows of sample data to give it really good context on what's in that column. So right now it's just handling that that request and writing the definitions and then loading them to the data dictionary. And so now we've done it for the HR data. So we'll go back and we'll do it for our NFL data too, which is the second table. And again, we're just going to auto generate for time. There's a little bit bigger data set, so this might take a little bit longer. But again, it's just getting a request to do this task. It's getting the context of those 5 rows plus the field headers of the sample data, and then it's going field by field, taking a look at what's in there and giving a reasonable description of what's in that field. Great. So now we should have definitions for everything. And if we load our data dictionary, we can now see that definition field has information in it, right? So that's great. All right, so let's go ahead and quit this and run the second part of the program, which is the actual data analyst assistant, which uses AI. So the system will prompt you when you run the program of what analysis you want to run, and it can essentially translate any natural language description of an analysis into a program, so code, that it will then either automatically run or output for you to review and then run. And it's really important to point out that there is no exposure of actual data here. We are simply giving OpenAI the data dictionary, which gives us high-level schema information, but it doesn't expose any row-level data to OpenAI. OpenAI is just going to look at what you want, look at your schema, and then give you either SQL or Python code that will be able to be executed to answer your question. So in this case, I've got a couple queries ready to go. So the first one is going to be, I need a list of positions and new columns for average salary if the person was hired before 2023 versus after. So it's going to come from my HR data set, which OpenAI will take a look at our database schema and be able to determine that automatically, right? So here is the output code that it generated. Since this was SQLite, we actually give it permission to just go ahead and execute the code and output as an Excel file the results. So we can see that file here, which are all the results of positions, salary before and salary after 2023. Cool, right? So it just happens quickly as that. But we can also run Python code. So for things that are a bit more involved that can't be done in SQLite, we can go ahead and have OpenAI choose to write Python code, which handles things like regressions or like large-scale data transformations. So in this case, we're going to give it like kind of a complex query. We're going to ask it to run a linear regression that looks at how number of years played in excess of 4 seasons explains fantasy football points for running backs. So there's like a lot going on there. And my prediction is that OpenAI will choose to create Python to answer this question. So again, every time we send it over, a query over, we send that data dictionary as well that gives it the context of how to write the code that we need. And since Python can do a lot more to your computer, we don't auto execute the Python code like we did for SQLite. So there won't be an output file, but what there will be is an output script, which is the full Python program that will run the analysis that I asked for. So it's the code output. And we can, since Python, review it and make sure it's not doing anything funky that might be, we might be uncomfortable with it doing on our computer. And then also make any revisions and then go ahead and run it. So just to prove that this does run, let's go ahead and try and run it. And bam, here's our regression analysis down here. So pretty cool. A couple other things to point out really quickly, and then I'll wrap it up. We create, every time we send a query, we create a query log entry, which gives the query an ID. So you can see our first one for that HR query of salaries before and after 2023, which just says, what did we ask? What was the context for how it thought about that? And then what was the actual code output? And then the second entry, of course, is the Python one, which is all the same information. So we track all the queries that were asked. If you wanted to use the system for like ticketing, so you have maybe a group that handles requests from a client, you could have the client, send an email to a shared inbox, have maybe like a Power Automate, send the request of that email over to the system, and then the system would log the request, get you started on the code, and then someone could come review the code and send the results back once they deem it accurate. So it could be kind of a really powerful group ticketing system. But that's also powerful because the last thing that we can run in our system is the ability to pull up old queries and edit them. So let's go back to that first query, that HR query where I asked for salary before and after 2023. If I wanted to take a look at the SQL code and maybe tweak it, maybe some parameter has changed, or I need to correct something, maybe that the code was wrong, I can run this utility, which will, oops, I mistyped it. Sorry, got the name wrong. Update tester.py. This is the utility, I think. Oh. Okay, finally got it right. So this is a utility that essentially goes into that query log and says, which query do you want to include in the tester script? And if I want like just a list of them, I can put an incorrect one in and it'll tell me which ones are actually available, or I can just go into that file and find it myself. But let's say I wanted to load the SQLite one. Well, I know that's the first one. So I can go ahead and tell it to load that, right? And it is going to update my SQLite tester script with code from that query. So when I go back in here, the only thing that's changed is the SQLite statement that had been produced. So you can see it's that base salary before and after query. And then I can go ahead and update anything I want and run it, and it'll spit out to Excel, which is pretty cool. So all right, awesome. Well, hopefully you guys find this useful. Someone finds this useful. Again, I will link the repository. Feel free to download it, to use it, to take components of it, to use it all, to add to it. But meant to be helpful for everyone. There's a README that gives a little bit more information on how to install and run this repository. I do want to give one note that it does require an OpenAI API key, which you can find information about how to get and store in OpenAI's API guide, which is linked here. Thank you so much. Hope you all enjoyed. Take care. Bye.